welcome to Mystic Brew. I am Radagast, and not completely sure what I'm going to call this. I know I kind of have an idea what I'm going to say. I hope got some good views on the last show I did with Moose, the Mystic and the Moose, with Raksha Moose. And I thought a lot of good information about communication came out in that, and we've had some good conversations since then, and I think the one we do next Friday will be a good continuation and working with what we're discovering together, as as we kind of sit in our little cyber powwows with different people, and the ideas just seem to be forming. And I'd like to think it's from what's happening with regards to the Earth, where we are in the universe, the consciousness that resides in our Earth, and our little by little kind of tuning into it. Some of it seems to be quite natural, and some of it seems to be a little more exposure to let's call it maybe some like Gnostic strains of thought. The Gnostic I find the most earth connecting. There's a lot of other kind of drawing on the ancient traditions and ancestral traditions, but it's been a long time, and I think some of the deeper connections might have been lost. I think a lot of the ritual has been kept, but I'm not sure all of the import of the ritual has been kept. So where did I want to start here? Oh yeah, and the other thing, I have I recorded some. I was rehearsing with Unkl Butchie. Unkl Butchie is currently myself, Butch Robbins, the banjo player, and Mark Webb on drums, and so I took it upon myself to take my little Tascam recorder has internal mics, nothing special there, and just kind of place it a little bit side to my amp, a little bit over by Butch, with the drummer being a little bit further back, and just let it record. And so one of Butch's songs that I really like, it's called 40 Years Late, and we did a pretty good we just kind of run through the songs at rehearsal. It's not like, oh, we could do that better, let's do it again. We just run through them. But I have a really good, what I think is a good take. And I put a little bit of equalization, a little compression, and just a tiny bit of almost imperceptible reverb to not make it sound dead like a basement room. And so I'm going to play that after I kind of talk a little bit. So for me, the big highlight is finally starting to take some of what I'm doing organically, what I'm doing in real life, and making music, and especially this kind of music. Because of the banjo, that's pulling on some really good kind of roots music, or let's call it roots tone of that kind of music. But when I play this piece for you, I think the last thing you're going to think of is a shack in the woods. Not that a shack in the woods isn't something that I might not really enjoy. But anyway, so for me, kind of like touching back into the Gnostic thing is just kind of like, remember the earth was created for us humans. It wasn't created for a ruler class. It wasn't, we've kind of allowed it in many ways. I mean, look, there's been a lot of social engineering, and social engineering is not so difficult when you're kind of like in that normal human trust mode, and those who can, because generally I think organic human civilizations are the ones that are the most capable, do the most, and then they everybody who can does what they can, and it tends to get fairly well organized like that. And so, and one of the things that has created what I consider to be an unhealthy relationship with the earth, and even with the supernatural, with the God concept, is whether or not the kind of primary relationship, however you identify that, is one of based in love and is kind of parent-child. And in the parent-child analogy, I like to make it clear that the children can stay as children, but generally there's a progression. It's almost like any parental figure. Even if you're a flower, the whole idea is to put out seed, grow things up where they become of equal stature, performing many of the same functions. So the whole thing is, is our connection to our Creator one of parent-child based on love, with children reaching a certain form of adulthood in this process also? Or do we have a master-slave relationship that's kind of based on fear? And these are two very different models. And to me, the way you connect, whether through meditation, prayer, and just make connection to your eternal spark, whether or not when you're kind of going to where you're sourcing yourself from, do you see that as one of love and parent, and you're always in this growth phase that doesn't have a state of perfection? It just has a state of greater and greater ability. And then the other one that's kind of based on fear, and if one doesn't perform a certain way, and by a performance that's largely kind of written out, that you can get enough cosmic demerits to spend eternity in a nasty place. Part of some of the inner work, and Raksha Moose has been doing great stuff on inner work. He's been quite eloquent to me, putting out ideas of self-validity and knowing yourself. Instead of saying knowing thyself, we'll say know yourself. Because by knowing yourself, we can know ourselves. And ourselves is where we will derive great sovereignty and the power, not force. There's a real difference between, to me, there is cosmic power, but it isn't a cosmic. It doesn't force. It's available. It does do what it does, but it does it because there's a way that's going to be done. Well, so it was that kind of parent-child thing. The fullness behind the parts. The fullness is the English word for the Greek word pleroma. What comes through to us from very ancient teachings in through the Gnostics that were discovered in the Nag Hammadi texts, and what could be parsed out, is that the pleroma, the galactic center, which is kind of like a big plasma ball, and where the intelligence of everything originates, that they kind of place our origin, our spirit origin, the fact of those of us who have kind of tapped into that we're eternal, that we are multidimensional, and that there is a kind of beginning of where we are along the fractal line. And so that, the Greek word was pleroma, but in English it means the fullness. And so the Gnostic story would be then a portion of that fullness, and that fullness was kind of part of emanations that had different qualities. And one of those emanations was wisdom, called by the Greeks Sophia, and for clarity's sake, Sophia, to differentiate from a woman's name. And this portion got very tied up with one of the possibilities that was going to occur from the panspermia spread by the fullness into the galactic arms. Just this bit of a story here. And that portion of the fullness, there was a portion of the fullness that kind of fell into the canoma, and the canoma is the part of the accretion or galactic disk that you see in galactic portrayals that look like almost like a hurricane spiral. And that matter that goes around the center is called the canoma in the Greek. And so a portion of the fullness kind of chased something, or we got too very involved with something that was going to be happening on Earth, and ended up here. So a part of the fullness is with Earth. So like we kind of have that initial, we have that one connection that is just from, we all come from the same source. But there's also the fact that source kind of has its own little population, and that an aspect of that fullness fell into the Earth. And that was the wisdom aspect. And nature is one of the expressions of that wisdom. That's, of course, I'm quite sure if we're not parked into that, we can bring up all kinds of things that makes nature look nasty. It's part of what happens when you get removed from the natural process, and then you don't understand the greater unfoldment of things and how you might even be involved in them. That's provided your protective government isn't already doing things to the weather. Where am I? 12 minutes. So one of the things to kind of engage is to realize that there's two ways to kind of engage with the next dimension, fourth dimension, astral plane. You can actually, there are people who can do out of their body stuff, and I guess that certainly gives you more presence in the astral world. But in my limited experience, limited on purpose, there is you kind of open yourself up to being overpowered, tricked, or otherwise by people who live there, by beings that live there. Kind of wouldn't be very hard for a shark to outsmart you in the water. But there's quite a lot of activity on the lower astral plane, and a lot of that activity. And if you take out the dream stuff from people dreaming, and you kind of go to more of the full-time inhabitants of that area, it has an unbalanced presence by of fourth dimensional beings who are envious of us. And but one of the things that's kind of not so hard to do is imagine yourself into the next, like the astral world, by keeping your astral body in your body. In many ways, it's very safe there. There's a less effectiveness as a mental projection into there, but you don't escape being on the radar. And I just think it's kind of would be playful, especially in this really where you really can't get messed with kind of way of doing it, of just playing the part of mosquito. Mosquitoes of light on the astral plane by just kind of casting yourself in there, And whether you see anything or not, know that there's stuff there, and say hello. We're here. You're not alone anymore. It's not just yours. That's kind of like, I guess, the magical comment of the night. So what I have decided to do, let's see, I have a picture. I'll show it to you right now. That's a picture of Unkl Butchie. And I have the song queued up. And what I'm going to try and do, there's two pictures of us. And once I get this started, I might be able to go into where it can flip two pictures of us in a way that might be a little more playful with the music, if it works. But I'm going to start out. Let me see. I'm going to transition. Okay, so this is 40 Years Late, written by Butch Robbins, who's the man with the banjo there, and accompanied by Mark on drums and myself on bass guitar. And so just let me kind of call up my player, and just hope that this goes okay. I'm going to turn off my mic and hope to treat you to a nice little musical piece. 40 Years Late by Butch Robbins. Count me out for Mark. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so let me get myself back into the picture. I hope that worked out. So that was 40 Years Late by Butch Robbins, as performed by Unkl Butchie at our rehearsal on August the 11th, down in my basement in Floyd, Virginia. So there was another song or two that was tasty, and I will get those re-engineered. I was going to redo two, but engineering one turned out to be enough. And so anyway, I'm going to make that. I'm going to close with that. Keep this a relatively short mystic brew, and I will be catching up with everybody. Just a lot going on in real life. Some good stuff going on online. A lot of good, Global Mission of Peace is doing well, and so anyway, I'd like to thank you all for tuning in to me. Those who are staying subscribed, and we will continue. And so you all be well, stay sane, and I'll see you next time.